Okay, it's time's up for China. So what happens now? I'm sure by now, a majority of you have came across this video as it has raked up at least 3.2 million views and counting. Funny enough, after running this channel for almost close to 18 months now, my lifetime viewership don't even come close to 2 million views. So let's talk about this China video that essentially blew up on YouTube. On the 8th of August 2022, Casgains Academy uploaded this video titled China's Capital Entire Economy Will Collapse in 34 Days. Today, the 11th of September, marks exactly the 34th day. Not only did China's economy not collapse, the protagonists of this entire debacle, mainly real estate developers that were listed in Hong Kong, saw a huge rally last Friday. So what the heck is happening? For one, I think it's good to take everything online with a grain of salt, especially relating to China. Chinese media sources are probably going to say, hey, everything is fine, trust me bro, while non-Chinese ones will probably just drive China into oblivion. It's not the first time that pundits are calling the end of China, so why would this time be any different? But one thing for sure though, these doomsday messenger cannot even coordinate on the same timeline on their prophecy. Anyhow, please at least make sure that we coordinate together to smash on that like button. If not, China might really have to collapse due to utter disappointment. Also, this video is sponsored by Weibo. So I know many of you smart investors out there have already taken advantage of the different sign-up rewards in the past 3 months. But in case you haven't, Weibo recently leveled up their game again. And from now until the 30th of September 2022, every new sign-ups will get up to $130 USD worth of Tesla shares. So I'll leave the link and instructions down below. Essentially, you just need to deposit at least 2,000 Singapore dollars and execute one buy trade of a stock or ETF and one option, and you'll get an 8% ROI from the sign-up rewards. Definitely a lot better than Alibaba. So I'm currently using Weibo for my 15,000 portfolio as well. So don't let this guaranteed deal get away. Link in the description box. Now, let's talk about the real problem plaguing the Chinese economy today and why they are at the brink of collapsing, like many asserts. Primarily, there are two reasons. The first issue is of course the impending collapse of the property bubble, and the second is about the bank run. So in case people allege me for shooting cannon behind a horse, which is 马后炮, which means in hindsight, I've talked about Evergrande in at least 5 other videos since 2021, and the bank run since early July. So after having sat through most of their videos on YouTube, I would definitely give them 2 thumbs up for being able to sieve out so many relevant and also accurate information, given that China has such a tight control over the flow of information locally. Either China sucked at doing their job of censoring, or these creators are just that good at digging information from China. Jokes aside, I think many of them have a knack of breaking down rather complex topics that I've learned in my finance degrees, for example, Ponzi schemes, and also the intricacies of the world financial system. And they managed to educate millions of viewers on this platform, so I'll have to give credit where it's due. That said, I think there has been an unhealthy level of obscuring and manipulation of data, mixing of concepts, and also slippery slope arguments being peppered throughout the entire video. So in this video, I'll try to give you my perspective. Of course, I don't claim to know the ins and outs of China, so just take this video for what it's worth. So to clear the biggest misconception of our time, the real estate bubble is the real estate bubble. The alleged bank run is the bank run. So it seems like many of them are conflating the two together, forming the impression that it's the real estate bubble causing the bank run in China today. So as far as how I understand things that are playing out, this is categorically untrue. So stop it.
Stop it. Get some help.
Next, to address the most commonly played video on the internet about China today, it's of course regarding the protest itself. Many of them showed heart-wrenching videos about how China is quote-unquote attempting to crush the protests and beating up ordinary Chinese citizens who are victims of this alleged bank run. So they're essentially trying to evoke some sort of sympathy from the viewers. And I perfectly get it, and I'm fine with it, as long as it's true. Upon further digging, however, you realize that it's not simply a quote-unquote bank run problem. So to not belabor the point, because I've probably spent a considerable amount of time breaking down the bank run issue in 2 other videos, so I'll leave the link in the description box down below. So long story short, there was a bunch of malicious actors that essentially ganged up with local banks trying to offer quote-unquote marginally higher interest rates to dupe ordinary folks into investment products, and they essentially swindled all their monies away. So after getting scammed, how do you expect the bank to return your money? If they've already signed on the dotted line with the scammers and the scammers have ran away. Of course, the first instinct would be to punish the local banks, because how would your ordinary, normal Chinese citizens know whether it was a scam or not? So I think we should all hold our horses, because it takes time for investigations to take place, in case you have forgotten, and I'm sure the negligent actor will pay the price. Because, let's not forget, this is China we are talking about, not Wall Street. But we should not jump to conclusions so quickly, especially when you don't have all the facts at hand and you try to lynch the different stakeholders. And throwing this question back at you, what would be the most logical thing to do if you are the bank and it has come to your attention that there was this huge scamming thing going on? Freeze first and talk later, right? So to build on this bank run problem, I've seen many numbers being thrown around, claiming that this freeze affected about 400,000 bank customers with deposits amounting to 6 billion United States dollar. So I'm not too sure where they got their 6 billion figure from. So I went to do some quick Google search, and it was from sources like news.bitcoin.com or timesofindia.com. So outlets like abc.net and Reuters actually cited Syfe, which is a state-owned media, and the reported frozen amount could total to around $1.5 billion. Anyhow, let's just assume that 6 billion is closer to the correct amount, because we can't trust the numbers coming out from China, right? So at first look, 6 billion USD is not some chump change. So for those of you who think that $6 billion is too little, I can leave you my bank details, you can send them over to me. That said, however, it doesn't mean anything to us as outsiders if we don't know the impact of this said $6 billion. In the grander scheme of things, according to CEIC data, as of July 2022, China's total deposits actually amounted to around $37.2 trillion. $37 trillion, my friend. That's 0.01% of the deposits affected. And this is going to cause the collapse of the entire Chinese economy? Really? Oh, and for the clowns asserting that this is going to cause major distrust in the entire Chinese banking system, don't you worry. This actually strengthens the trust between the consumers, which is normal Chinese citizens, and the big 4 national Chinese banks, ICBC, CCB, ABC, and BOC. So the bank run problem happened to the local banks. Don't ask me why people rather put their money in the local banks, but I did mention in my previous video. So when I first read this article, I was quite surprised. I was thinking, hey, I was under the impression that PBOC was the one that quote-unquote scammed them and freeze their assets. And then to get the context right, it's actually the 4 rural banks in the Henan province that quote-unquote scam and pause their withdrawals. So it's not the People's Bank of China. I was willing to even go out and bet like $10,000 that any of all these quote-unquote big banks in China like ICBC, People's Bank of China, regardless of how big a crisis they are in, the government will bail them out. Trust me on this. So the entire framing of this reporting is slightly suspicious, but of course this is my own opinion. Since they can't get any answers from the rural banks, that's why they march towards the central banks, and in hopes that they want to draw the attention of the central government. So yes, nobody is losing confidence in the Chinese banking system anytime soon. So stop spreading fake news. Stop it.
Stop it. Get some help.
Of course, on top of this bank freeze, many continues to assert that there is a huge wave of boycotts where citizens refuse to pay mortgages, and some of them argued that this would cause a domino effect to the entire financial sector. So for one, when we observe China's non-performing loans ratio, it has actually been on a decline since September of 2020. And guess what? Do you still remember when did China introduce the 3 red line policies in the attempt to quote-unquote deleverage the entire property sector? It was actually back in August of 2020. So who would have known that deleveraging would actually cause lower levels of non-performing loans? So I think the biggest question for most of us here would be, how broad and how deep is this real estate problem? So to give you the short answer, nobody knows. Not pundits, not experts, and definitely not YouTubers. That said, I'll give you these facts. So the CCP kickstarted this tightening ordeal with the 3 red line policy back in 2020, knowing full well of the repercussions, and particularly so during a pandemic when the world came to a standstill. So it was not a politically smart move, but they are kind of in it for the long term, because there's technically no forms of removal of this government. One thing for sure though, the legitimacy of this government is founded on the effectiveness of them delivering promises. So for now, it definitely don't look pretty for them. But they've made many provisions in their attempt to try to soften the blow while trying to deleverage the property sector, like lowering the reserve requirement ratios, lowering interest rates, revising the 3 red line policies, and huge infrastructure plans in place. So the trickiest of them all for now is how they are intending to take over the mess the developers have caused, whether it's through restructuring, quasi-takeovers, nationalizations, and what have you. So we should keep our eyes peeled. That said, of course I'm not ruling out the possibility of China collapsing tomorrow, but I think it's rather naive to buy into the argument that such a big economy will collapse in a mere 30 days. In the attempt to get clicks and sensationalize the topic, I empathize. But for those of you who really fundamentally believe so, I wonder how it feels when your worldview collapses on itself. Yes, China has a boatload of issues, and I'm not their spokesperson to help defend them, but so is many big nations. But the scale of these problems need to be seen within context, and I hope you had a greater appreciation after this. With that, I will see you in the next video, but more importantly, I will see you on the moon. Goodbye!